Hello PHPers, Bruce here with a quick video review of Lab 13. Actually, this is terrible that I have document here for the title. This should be Lab 13. Okay, Bruce's solution. What a poor instructor I am. All right, so let's go through this. Let's go through the functions first. The functions that I had you generate, one was random_char, which took a string, and could be any string, and what its job is to do is to return a random character from that string. And what I'm doing here on line 17 is I'm using the random_int, and I'm starting at position 0 of that string. I'm taking the length of that string and subtracting 1. That is the upper bound that you want to be able to index into this string, right? So I'm just going to do this here. So if we enter a string Bruce, right, we pass that in, right? The string is Bruce, and the length of that string is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 characters. So what we're going to do here is we're going to generate a random number between 0, right, and 5 minus 1, 4, right? 4. Because look, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's why we subtract 1, because we need to be able to index into that string. But if we use the actual length of that string, we'd be out of bounds, right? We'd be out of bounds, okay? So that's what that function does. Now, I wrote this in one statement here just to show you how you could do something like this. You could have written it in multiple statements, but I decided to combine mine together. The next function, random_string, takes a length, right, the size of a string you want to generate, and the string that's the source, right, of the thing you want to pick characters out of, right? And say you give it, like we did, A, B, C, D, E, you know, whatever it may be, capital A, B, C, all, whatever it may be, and generate, right, using that RandomChar function that we defined above, and to put together a new string using random characters from that string. And in our case, we'll just call that a password. So I loop for the length of that string, right? As soon as it hits the length, it's going to stop because we're going I less than the length of that string, right? And then what we're doing is we're calling that RandomChar function with the string, and we're asking it to return, right, a single character, right? This function, right, RandomChar on line 16, 17, and 18, its job is to return a single character at a time. And what this guy does on line 23 here is it builds, right, through string concatenation, that password, that string, and then it sends it back to whoever called it. Okay, now the main function, generate password, this thing is going to get called once we know we have a post. That's its job. It's gonna fire up the machinery to do all this stuff, right? Okay. So let me just skip over this function right now and just take you down to the form. Now the form, let me see if I can pull this up. Yeah, let's go right here. The form is what you see here. It's got a bunch of check boxes, right? It's got a select with the numbers 8 through 40. And thank you, Bruno, for making me change it to 40 and not 35. And what its job is to do, right, is to generate that password, right? So let's go through the form. It's a simple HTML form. I set the action to itself, method post. I'll go through the sticky stuff later, which is right here, and it's very similar to the code that I posted in Slack over the weekend on how to do sticky checkboxes. For the select, what I did is I just used my PHP powers here to generate options from 8 to 40, right? 8 including 40, with the options and the associated values. And a submit button that says generate a password. So then I stitched in some logic right here that said, hey man, are we dealing with a post? And are any of the checkboxes set? Because what can happen here, somebody could do something like this where, right, they're just clicking the button, right? That's a post, but nothing's set, right? So we don't want to do any processing. So that's what this statement on line 57 does right here. It makes sure that we have a post and the options post data, right, in the superglobal is in fact set. Because unlike a text field, right, or a dropdown, which is always set, they may be empty, but they're always set, checkboxes won't be set by default. So that's where we can check to see if in fact they are set. That means we have at least one value in them, maybe more. Okay. So the next thing I do is once we've determined that someone has clicked on the generate data button and that someone has checked one or more of the checkboxes, then I start just like echoing out, you selected to generate password a password containing, and this is where I asked you to list out the various things that the user selected. So I use a for each loop and I iterate through the options superglobal in the post. And then what I do is I say if the value is lower, that means the user obviously clicked on lower, I set this new variable called option lower equal to checked. Because this is for my sticky selects. What I'm going to do is use these variables. In fact, let me show you right here. I echo out $option lower, option upper, option numbers. Okay, I'm on lines 95, 96, 97, etc. And if they are, if they're not blank, right, then they'll be echoed out as checked. So if they are, in fact, part of the post, I set these variables to the word checked, and that's how I set them in the sticky in the form here. Now, if they're not set, what I did at the very top is I set them equal to empty strings. Okay, I could have put them down here, right down right in here, but I didn't want to. Or above here, I wanted to define all my variables at the top, all my functions at the top. I did have them, down here originally, but they, when you have variable declarations, you should do it towards the top of the code, not scattered throughout the code. So that's how I did the stickies. And then what happens is I close the ordered list here. I forgot to mention that I open an ordered list and I put out a bunch of list options here, right? Right. So this is the value that gets posted, that shows up on the screen, right? So if I do lower, upper, number, symbols, and yeah. So these are the list items that I generate, right? It's right here. So 62, line 62, is showing you those list items. All the other stuff is to handle the variables that I use in my sticky form. So next I need to grab the length off the form, right? I need to say, hey, post superglobal, give me your length. And I assign that to a variable. And then what I do here is I say password with an H2, and then on line 86 I say your super secret password is, and I call the generate password function just with the length. How big of a password do you want? And I wrap that in strong. So remember the generate password function, right here, is going to eventually return something at the bottom. But we haven't gone through that function yet, right? So here's the generate password. We take the length that the user selected from the form, and now our job is to build that super secret password, right? At any time, just hit rewind, pause, study the code, and yeah, okay. So let's go to the generate password function. Generate password function takes a length, and here's a bunch of variables that I wound up defining inside of my code here. And the reason why, I put them at the top, and they're inside of the function because they belong to the function. They have no use outside of the function. They're not global. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm looping through the post again, and I don't need to check whether we're dealing with a post or not, because in order to execute the generate password function, right, we only could call that particular function like we did down here if we were dealing with a post. So I know that we're cool. I don't have to check for is set or any of that crap. Okay, crap is a technical term. So what I'm doing here is I'm looping through just like I did before down below right here. But what I'm doing is I'm building new variables for lower, upper, numbers, and symbols. And that's why I set them to blank, because if the user didn't check them, I want to have a blank string that I can eventually append onto this guy right down here on line 52, right? So if the user doesn't want numbers, right, or I mean lower or upper or numbers or symbols, that particular string will be blank. It'll be nothing, actually. Okay, it'll be an empty string. Okay, so the same principle here. If the value is lower, I implode the range of lowercase letters from A to Z with no spaces, just an empty string. Same thing with upper, the numbers 0 to 9, and symbols, since there's no range function for symbols, I just assign dollar symbols to just these, what we call a literal, a string literal. Okay, and then I build the big character string together. So if the user just selected lower, right, we'd have all the lowercase letters, empty string, and empty string. And the characters, right, $chars, would just be the lowercase letters. So what I do now is I return, while calling random_string, the length and the string of characters. Okay, like that. So I'm calling a function, random_string, which is up here. And that guy returns to me the password, right, on line 25. And then I take that password and I return it to the thing that called generate password, which is down right here on line 86. And it echoes out the password. Yeah, lots of functions calling other functions. Something we do all the time. If you ever look at the PHP code for WordPress, it looks just like this, or something very similar to this. Actually, any application, if you look at the Clarkbook application I wrote, okay? So go through it and ask me any questions you may have. In CTEC 227, I'm going to expect that you could all write something like this. In fact, the first week, I think we may have a little assessment that'll be used. I need to do it for the school, actually. That'll be able to make sure you're able to code something like this from pretty much from scratch. Okay? So if you have any questions, you know where to find me. Thanks for watching a video review of Lab 13.